Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Mike Chu, a physical therapist and certified dementia practitioner. And yes, I am your alternative healthcare career coach. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how to start your ergonomic business.
HelloNote is a truly therapist-friendly practice management solution with integrated EMR that will enhance workflow, efficiency, and patient care. HelloNote reduces error and allows you to spend more time with your patients. It comes integrated with billing. Claims are generated once a note is completed. You can bill with one click and a patient portal, which streamlines the patient intake process. Beautifully engineered and cloud-based for easy accessibility, the software works on all platforms. You can access patient records from anywhere. We also offer 24/7 support. HelloNote is the practice management solution that you're looking for.
Just in case, why don't you quickly sort of share a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born. No, just kidding. Don't you love that? Thank you. I'll keep it concise. I've been licensed about 30 years as a PT. I've got both an undergraduate and a doctorate in physical therapy, so two clinical degrees. Been licensed, what I say, about 30 years now, and my background is in outpatient orthopedic, sports medicine, and industrial medicine. That's where I kind of made my bones, so to speak. And I actually used to keep track because I'm back from the days of high volume. So about 20 years into my career, I literally would keep track, and I was like, God, I've treated 23,000 patients. That's enough to fill a modern arena and still have thousands in the parking lot. And all of a sudden, I asked myself, why am I doing that? So I did that, and then about a little over 12 years, I had this opportunity. I also owned and operated my own award-winning outpatient rehab center, so I know how the sausage is made. It's not only that I was a clinician, kind of did that, then I was an owner, and of course, management, rehab director, different places and stuff like that, and eventually ran orthopedic groups rehab. I won't go into that, but about 12 years ago, a very unique opportunity in my world came along, which is now not as unique, and that we should talk about as well. And that is, I had the opportunity to go work as an on-site physical therapist for a big, dirty, dangerous paper mill in Florida with 1,300 employees. It was only supposed to be a 10 to 20 hour a week contract for a year or two. And once they got somebody like us, you and me, on board, they just grabbed on with both hands and said, we want her here, or in my case, we want him here full time. Would you come work for us full time? And I was like, heck yeah. And a year or two turned into 6. And in those 6 years, I learned a lot. The plant manager was somebody who gave me a lot of latitude with his 1,300 employees. And I developed a lot of prevention medicine approaches and things like that. And then we took it on the road. We just started going around, and eventually I started working and teaching for the back school and Summit Professional Education, and probably the one I'm most proud of, and that's alternative healthcare careers.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I think a lot of people may not know sort of what ergonomics is. So I thought we'd take a moment here because I didn't know either, everyone listening. I really didn't know. I stumbled upon Matt and ergonomics and just sort of grabbed hold because it is such an amazing career route. And you're going to find out in just a second because it's something that goes beyond our professional designations. While I love our professional designation, I'm a PT, but while I love that, it sometimes hinders us, especially for assistants out there. I feel like you feel especially hindered and you want to earn more. You want to have more flexibility. You want to maybe work remotely. And so being an assistant is very challenging when it comes to those desires. But that's where ergonomics is amazing because it can triumph that. Because you're now working in the scope of prevention, you are using your skills, our knowledge of human anatomy, musculoskeletal injuries, and using those skills, but now we're putting them into prevention. So for all of you always saying, I want to actually do more and go into prevention, ergonomics is an amazing career route or business route that you can go into. So Matt, why don't you, since you're the pro here, why don't you really dive into a little bit that there's two different routes, that there's an office ergonomics and then an industrial ergonomics?
That's a very good point, and it's even more rich than that. But before I go on, I just want to say again that you're providing this avenue for people to realize, listen, you were given a world-class education, and you have a skill set that few on the planet have. And it serves you well in the clinical box that they want us to fit into. Don't get me wrong; we're all cool with that. But outside of that clinical box, there's a lot of application there as well too. And sadly, they don't teach us enough of that in school, but I hope that's going to change in the years to come. um, you mentioned office and industrial. There is also opportunity, and I'm glad you pointed it out, for our CODA friends, COTAs, and our PTA friends, as well as our PTs and DPTs and OTs and DOTs. There's room for all of us there, because in the prevention realm, realize there are people doing ergonomics who have none of those designations. So you've actually got a bonus on top of who's already out there. That's the point. And the two broad spheres that you bring up, the in office and industrial, are we always start off with the office, because the office is super simple. I always say it's like making breakfast. It's hard to mess up making breakfast, bacon and eggs or whatever the case may be. Pour some cereal into a bowl, add milk. How do you mess up breakfast? Well, office ergonomics is kind of the nice place to dip your toe, because let's face it, you got a monitor, you got a mouse, you got a keyboard, you got a chair. Good night, everybody. It's been nice talking to you. I mean, it's that simple. And so really you're just laying that stuff out. But as you and I do in our classes, is help our attendees recognize, guys, that's where we start. That's the easy stuff. Once you do that, you've now created a bond with that person opposite you in like for instance, a remote setting, to where you can roll out everything else you have to offer. And it's sort of like, would you like a little guidance on stress management? Because I've done a lot of reading on breath work and we could talk about that. Or maybe some of our listeners have a yoga background. Maybe some of them have a Pilates background. Some of them have a Tai Chi or a Qigong. Or this is where you get to roll that in. So the ergonomics and setting up the workstation, that's the easy stuff. What it is, it creates an opportunity for you to show what else you have to offer. It might even be hydration. It might be nutrition. Because remember, when we're in the realm of prevention versus reaction, we have much more latitude. We're dealing with well people. We're not dealing with sick people with ICD-10 code, diagnoses codes and CPT codes. So that's the opening tier for our learning. That's how I learned. That's how most of us learn. Then we go into industrial, which does get more complex, but we smooth that out as well and say, listen, you're moving into that big, dirty, dangerous paper mill. So there's more to know than just a monitor height and key pad, but there's plenty of tools out there. And when they're laid out for you, can create a nice opportunity there as well.
Oh, definitely. I was actually on a call this morning with it was a physical therapist, and she's working with another physical therapist, and they have a women's health, a pelvic floor practice. And she had just finished taking her course, and she was like, "Oh, I'd love to tie this in, but I really don't know how." And I'm by far not a pelvic floor expert. We had very little in my schooling, but I was like, "Well, don't I think I remember a couple classes on like sitting and doing some exercises while you sit, and sitting on the physio ball." And I was like, I think you could actually tie in ergonomics even to pelvic floor now that I'm thinking about it,
Yes.
and so really the sky is the limit, and it blends so well entrepreneurial, but also industrial, because when you go into a company and you provide your, say, office ergonomic assessments, that's where then, you have all these other skill sets that a lot of other people don't have, which is your therapy background. And so I just think it blends so well with our background, in both fronts, either as a career wise or as an entrepreneur. And stay tuned because we have a lot of jobs I'm going to show you at the end. So if you're wondering, okay, a lot of fluff, is this real? Can I actually get this job? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs, and there are a lot more, but I'm just going to show you 5 because we only have time for 5. I'm going to show you them. But we want to dive into ergonomics even more on this call so that you can truly understand this path.
You make a great point. If I could just jump in for a second,
Yeah.
you make a very good point. I don't want to just drive by, and that is, and I took a lot of my training in the '90s from like the first wave of the PTs who got into this world. People like Lauren Hebert and Ron Porter and Dwayne Saunders. These were some of the groundbreakers during the '90s, and all would say, and I just want to reiterate it here, it's almost like we're, how do I put this? It's almost like we have secret superpowers. I know that sounds corny, but it's not. You've got all this education on anatomy and physiology and biomechanics and vestibular and kinesthesia and proprioception and on and on and on. And it serves you well in the clinic, no doubt. But the clinic is this funnel, this narrow funnel into this narrow application of that very broad skill set. When you find yourselves in the industrial world, definitely the office, but when you get into the industrial world, suddenly you're applying that skill set in ways you never even imagined. And it's almost like, you're pulling the Superman emblem and you're just like, wow, I didn't even ever think I would be in front of people talking about this, but it's relevant to these guys climbing ladders or these folks going in, everything. Vestibular, yeah, if you're going to be up on that scaffolding, we got to talk a little bit about your balance and your proprioception. Suddenly it just, boom, it opens up. So I didn't want to drive by that for you.
No, I love that you're right. It dives even deeper than just pure like, okay, let's work on your musculoskeletal issues. Thank you for that. I think actually while I'm listening to you, maybe it'd be helpful to sort of maybe describe a day in the life of someone who does ergonomics. So I don't know if you can try your best to sort of summarize what like a day of the life, maybe both in the office ergonomics and then on the industrial side would look like.
Yeah, well, I've done both. And when I was working at that paper plant, I was 40 hours a week for 6 years. So it was 12,000 hours of that experience. And in the office setting, that was often the kind of work I would do where I would go around and do the basic kind of office ergonomics that we described. After the first year or two, we kind of solved a lot of their problems. So then we had to go fishing to keep looking busy and to.
You were too good the first year.
You can put yourself right out of work if you're good, and hopefully, if there's more work stacked up, it doesn't bother you. But the office ergonomics really gives you this great opportunity to get people tied into, I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use it for a bookmark here, and that is wellness. It gives you a chance to say, listen, here's the literature. I stay up on the neuroscience. It's flooding out of the academy right now. We're really good if we give ourselves 20 to maybe 30-minute blocks. And it's not a bad thing to look away from the screen and do some shrugs and some rolls and some deep breaths. You know what? It's blank and refreshing. And when you come back, you're just a little cleaner and you're, like that. Now, some people have that kind of work that doesn't lend itself to that. If they're an engineer or something, and I've done a lot of assessments on engineers, they have their field work and they have their office work, and you have to look at both. But still, it's sort of like, listen, where possible, be able to do this. In the life of that ergonomist in the industrial setting, depending on the industrial setting, every day can be different, which is kind of beautiful. If 23,000 patients, after a while, every day was not different. It was Groundhog Day. If you remember that movie, I could answer people's questions, for them. And that's when it's sort of like, okay, I got to do more. This is becoming a rut. So we all get there. It's not anything, but as far as working in the industrial setting, it gave us the opportunity, especially in a diverse place like a paper plant, which has everything imaginable within it. So they have laboratories in paper plants for quality assessment and for environmental. They have naturally office areas. They have hot, heavy, dangerous kind of hot work with, you name it, they've got it there. So it was very diverse. But let me wrap this up to where both of them kind of come together. And that is, I'll give you an example of what we did after about the first year or two. We really solved most of their problems, but I dug the gig so much, I wanted to stay. So here's a little thing. I'm going to share a pearl with you here that sometimes we share in the class. And that was, I wound up buying one of those massage chairs, the ones with the rings you see in the airports and stuff. You put your face in the ring, you rest, and then the massage therapist works on you. Well, here that gets into that licensure stuff. That is, there's OSHA, and I'm not going to go too deep into that, but you have to be careful that what you're doing is not delivering medical treatment. It has to fall under the category of first aid. That's not a problem for other professions. That's not a problem for an athletic trainer at all, or a personal trainer, or an exercise physiologist. They can go rub on people all they want. You a PT, OT, CODA, PTA, your hands on skin can be interpreted as soft tissue mobilization or spinal. Whoa, that's not first aid. That's a recordable. So, in our classes, we teach the line. Here's the line, don't cross it. So anyway, back to what we did. I got the massage chair, and then I got one of those electric, the brand name is Morfam, Morfam massagers. It's like this two-fisted sander. You plugged it in, you cranked it up, like that. And we went around, we would set up lists at different break rooms around the plant and in the offices. I'm going somewhere with this, Emma. Hang with me. And what we would do was set up 15-minute intervals that workers could sign up for, because it's a production facility. It has to be the length of a coffee break, no more. So what we would do is we would show up with that massager, with that massage chair, and a couple of other things like, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was called a tiger's tail. It's like a petted rolling pin. You see them in some clinics. There was also this thing I used to call the cue ball, which was this plastic housing with a hard, like billiard ball in it. Anyway, we had this thing. We'd go around to different break rooms. People would sign up for it. We'd get them into the chair, and we would actually say, listen, I'm going to give you some guidance on some breath work. So we actually turned it into a guided meditation. We crank the machine up, and we start. First, I'd ask you, Emma, where do you feel the tension and stress or the fatigue of the day? And I don't mean to be, forgive me here, but I'm just going to share with what I saw. It seems that, but for the most part, women tend to carry that tension up in the shoulders and stuff, and then in the low back. That's a broad generalization. These are not patients. These are just people. That's where they seem to carry their stress. Long story short, Emma climbs into the chair, puts her face in the donut. We have all the cleaning stuff, so it gets cleaned up between everybody in between. We start leading her in guided imagery. Okay, Emma, I want you to start taking deep, slow, quiet, even breaths, long, slow, deep, silent breaths. Fire up the massager, start working on her, keep cueing her on her breathing, and work that area for about 7-8 minutes, watching a timer the whole time. Once that 7 or 8 minutes is up, shut the electric massager off, take out the rolling pin, work a little deeper, maybe turn it up on its end and hit those hot spots at the trapezius, you know where they are, and just kind of grind away a little of that. Then take out the cue ball and work the suboccipital in there. All the time, cueing Emma on breathing the whole time. About 12 minutes in, or not even that long, about 10 minutes in, pick up the massager, go one last time over it, everything like that. After we get up to about 12 minutes or so, shut everything off. Okay, Emma, when you're ready, just sit back from the donut and just sit there and bring your feet out front because they've been folded up under you on that chair. tap your toes till you feel like you've got, and then when you're ready, go ahead and stand. People pull back and they're just like, wow, you know, where have I been? They feel like they've been on a vacation. It's not over yet. We get them to stand up. And then we're like, if we were working in your shoulder area, we say, okay, Emma, now I'm going to show you some shrugs and some rolls. And I'm going to show you some stretches with the breathing we've been leading you on. So take a deep breath into your nose, exhale away from that hand. That's perfect, Emma. Inhale up, switch sides, exhale away from that hand. Beautiful. The last thing we do at about 13 or 14 minutes, we would carry around, by the way, we carried all this on a dolly. We would carry around a flat of waters. Crack open a water, we'd hand it to you, Emma. We just worked a bunch of stuff into your bloodstream. If you would, I'd like you to polish off this water, fill it 1 or 2 more times and polish that off. So it all works its way to your kidneys and finally out off into the commode later on today. Now, let's recount. In that 15 minutes, we got breath work and stress management. We got body work, we got exercise, and we got hydration. That's a lot of birds with one stone. But that's not all we were doing. What we were also doing when we first got you in the chair was, Emma, where you feel like tension, stress? Oh, it's my shoulders and everything. Why do you think that is? Oh, I'm always working at the desk like this. Ah, do you think it might be a good idea if I could come by on Tuesday and take a look at your workstation? So you see, we were using it as a gathering tool. We're giving out candy, you know, but at the same time, we're getting back, Emma, shoulders, workstation. Or the next person might be, oh man, my shoulder, man, I'm pulling this lever all day long. Wow, do you think on Wednesday I could come by? And boom, I've got an ergonomics client like that. So it was a way we were doing data gathering, giving out that feel good. And by the way, you wind up being the most popular person in the place. And
I could see that you definitely had that job for as long as you needed. No one was
milked
that one.
friend. It was a good gig. It paid. Oh, that's another thing. Let's not be. I'm not being crass here, but it paid well.
Yeah,
And
let's
it
talk a
was-
little bit about pay, because I know everyone's like, I think the biggest struggle, and I hope that was helpful, everyone, to sort of understand a day in the life of sort of how you would tie in the wellness. And, we didn't dive in, but, Matt has done presentations for other of these companies too. Like, there's corporate wellness presentations that go along with this as well. So it's sometimes just those different things as well. But, hopefully that helped. If it did, comment Matt's doing amazing or Matt is amazing. That would be appreciated. But let's dive into the money, because I know that in alternative careers, oftentimes people get a pay cut, which is a little bit saddening, but ergonomics pays pretty well. So go ahead and dive into that for a little bit, Matt.
Well, this, I'll give you the whole backstory. This particular gig at the paper plant was a company that, I don't know if they're still in business. They kind of come and go, but a company had the national account with this paper company. And this paper company at one time was a Fortune 100 company. So it was the highest of the highest in the Fortune 500. And they contracted with a national outfit for 9 of their plants in the US. And that company that contracted to have the on-site PT then looked around to find providers in the area. And actually, a colleague in that town, which was about 40 miles from my hometown in North Florida, was always after me to come work for him. And I was burnt out by then. I didn't really want to work for him as a clinician, but all of a sudden he sent me an email and he said, hey man, what is this? And I read it and I was like, dude, this is on site. And I want in. And let's be frank and brass tacks. This particular outfit charged $10,000 to get in. And I was like, dude, I'll pony up 5 if you'll pony up 5. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And so that's what we did. I said, I want in on this. I've studied this stuff in the 90s and could never find the work. But suddenly where I'm talking about is like 2009, 2008, 2009. And I was like, I'll do it. So I'll be the guy working. So we did that. And They put you through a training. It wasn't that good a training, but I didn't care. I was in. And once I was in, I kind of learned on the job as I went. The pay was about, and this is kind of the beautiful part, I think this is worthwhile, is the pay was 60 an hour, and I was not an employee, so I was a subcontractor. Now, I may have mentioned before, I owned and operated my own award-winning outpatient rehab center. In fact, it was called Ability Rehab. You can see this is one of, still got some of my old shirts here. Um, and in fact, I was like one of the first that had that name, Ability. That was back in the mid 90s. And but when I closed the clinic down, I kept the S corporation. Back in those days, there were no such thing as LLCs and LLPs. There was C corps or S corps. C corps if you were going to be a big monster, S corp if you were going to be small. Long story short, I subcontracted with that national contractor. So they just paid me straight $60 an hour, which meant I was responsible for my taxes and all like that. But full time, that was $1.25 a year doing work I really loved. So I was okay with that for 6 years, doing that. And since I had already owned a clinic, I had set up beforehand for me and my employees things like SEP IRAs. So I had a retirement account to put some of my money in. I bought my own health insurance and stuff like that, which wasn't as exorbitant back then. But those are some of the options. But here's the point I wanted to make before we move on, Emma. With that straight hourly rate, there was no pressure to run up the tab. And that's become a real problem in our field nowadays. Now that, pardon me, I'm not going to name any names, but there's a lot of venture capital that's gone into our field and has bought up hundreds and hundreds of PT clinics across the US. And the VCs, the venture capitalists, they want your nose on the grindstone. And sometimes I bring it up in our classes. I talk about CPT codes and where they came from, and how, frankly, I find them demeaning because they turn us into technicians checking boxes. Did you get enough? And if that weren't insult enough, it's injurious then, because then they use it as your productivity metric. So they're just sort of like, Emma, you're not checking enough boxes here.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, I thought I was a professional, not a technician. So circling back, that $60 an hour had no ties to running up any tabs. It had no ties to charges, which meant I could practice the most ethical PT that I ever practiced. And that when I owned my own award-winning outpatient rehab center, I had that luxury for the better part of a decade too, where I had such a solid feeder of orthopedic docs. I didn't have to cling to anybody. I would never dream of trying to squeeze every last visit out of a prescription. And I didn't do it then, and I didn't have to do it at the paper plant either, because I was strictly an hourly employee. So to give you a sense of scale, and I am not making these numbers up, I know him. He became a friend. His name is Pat Davis. He was a industrial electrician, which, by the way, those guys make six figures with a high school diploma. Thank you very much. Pat had bilateral knee replacements. He was not a heavy guy or anything like that, but he beat his knees up young when he was young. And he was in his 50s. He was back at work because he made such good money, and because he was so motivated as an employee to make that good money. I kid you not, I am not making these numbers up. We had him back to full duty in 9 visits, not 9 months, not 9 weeks, 9 visits. And that man was climbing ladders. And that's what I'm getting at. This is not a workers' comp milking it. This is somebody who's like, dude, do you know what I make? And when I'd find out, I'm like, crap, I went to college. No, this guy makes what I'm making. And he's the, and by the way, the other thing you learn in these settings is it really broadens your scope hugely on what intelligence really is. And when you work around a lot of these skilled tradespeople, you realize, you know what, academic intelligence is just one small sliver of what intelligence is. It's really, it's important. It applies here and there. I don't want to put it down, but it's just a small sliver. Pat Davis used to, and I am not making this up, if any of the people watching have ever tried to knock out a New York Times crossword, um, I don't get very far with those. Pat used to rip through them during one of our PT sessions. He burned through one, and I'm like, I've never seen that.
He
I've
sounds
never
like a
known
very smart
that.
guy.
So my point being, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. My point being is a lot of these people are very intelligent. They're just intelligent in a different way. They didn't go beyond high school. That's all they needed. But I
Definitely.
hope that's helpful.
No, that's very helpful. It's very helpful to know that. And I think that leads us into prevention. The idea behind ergonomics. I think that a lot of our burnout, and feel free to comment what you're feeling in terms of your burnout, but I feel like there are several different frustrations that we all have. One is income limitations, um, but the other is productivity. And
Yeah.
like what Matt said, there's this productivity intensity that we have where not only are we so exhaustingly busy, but we don't feel like we can really treat our patients. So that just really affects the reason why we became therapists or assistants. And so it just puts us down this deep, dark path of burnout and frustration. When you start to go into prevention, which is ergonomics, I almost think of them synonymously, is the fact that yes, because you're not doing CPT codes, because you're not really using insurance, you can treat people how they really should be treated, and do the therapy that we always loved. To summarize it, I think is do what we always wanted, which is to help people, but to not feel held back. And that's the nice thing.
God, that's very well put. So well put. And also when you get a chance to see people in their domain, not yours, we have this very, again,
Yes.
we're in this little box and it's sort of like I'm trying to get another 15 degrees of flexion. And it's like, what does that actually mean? Once I go out and I see that guy slinging a hammer or turning a wrench, and I don't mean guy either, I mean some of the best, we call them occupational athletes. Some of the best are also the women who are doing like nursing or um, hey, even waitressing. You see them throw that tray on that shoulder and weave her way between tables with people shoving back. And I couldn't do that, and then swing that thing down and lower it gently and not a drop is spilled. And, it's like that's skill. There's skill
Yeah.
involved there. And yeah, when you see them in their element, it's almost like the difference between being a zoologist and studying animals at the zoo or studying them in cages, and then taking a trip to Africa and seeing them in their domain, and you're like, oh my gosh, I did not realize hyenas did that, or I did not realize. Yeah, I mean, I think of hyenas because I just finished Robert Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It's an excellent physiology book on stress. It's like a world-class physiology book on stress. But Sapolsky did that. He'd go to Africa for years, and they've discovered things about hyenas they didn't know. One of the reasons hyenas and lions are always at each other is because lions are pretty lazy, and often the hyenas are the ones who hunt at night. They make the kill, and they're eating, and then the sun rises, and the lions saunter up and take the kill. And you wouldn't have known that. My point being, I only bring that up is because when you get out of the clinic, you've gotten out of, pardon my French here, you've gotten out of the zoo,
Yeah.
and you've gotten into the real world, and you're like, oh, that's why 15 degrees of flexion is so important. So suddenly, and I will take this to my grave, it makes you a much better clinician. There is no
Exactly. No, I agree 100%. I really do feel like it does. So what we're going to do next, guys, is I feel like this talk about prevention leads us perfectly into why assistants can do this and how assistants can do that. Because I know a lot of people really want us to answer this question. And so we're
Yes.
going to answer that. And then after, we're going to talk about what do you need to get into this career path? I know there's some questions on the comments about certifications and that. So we're going to do that next. And then I'm going to show you these different job posts so you can see that you have the skills to match this. So let's answer the question, Matt, is why can assistants do this? And can they do this?
Absolutely, they can. And let me share a story with you and why I want to see more assistants get into this. So again, 6-year full-time gig at this plant, and about 2 to 3 years in, the approach that I designed was field tested, and I was like, I want to get this on the road. I want to share this with others. So I needed to backfill my position and pay someone to be there so I could be out generating more business. And I ran some ads. The first thing I ran, and remember, this was 10, 15 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. So I ran an ad for PTs and OTs for around 45 to $50 an hour. Not bad, just some straight cash. You handle your own insurance and all that. You're not my employee. You're my subcontractor. That's kind of how it works. It's a daisy chain. And not a single strike on the ad. Okay. The market's telling me there aren't PTs out here who want to do this work. They don't want to work at a big, dirty, dangerous paper mill. I don't blame them. So then I ran an ad. I said, well, PTAs and codas. So I ran another ad, same ad, this time 35 to 40 an hour. It's like, you know what? That's pretty decent. You could be here, working 2 days a week, full 2 8-hour days. And if you're doing a little home health on the side, you could be making a really pretty good little living and have control of your work. Zero responses to that. Okay. The market is telling me what it'll bear, and I guess the PTAs and codas don't want this either. So then I ran a third ad, and the third ad was for athletic trainers, ATCs, and that was for 20 to 25 an hour. I filled a file an inch thick with applicants from athletic training. And frankly, that was 10, 12, however many years ago. Since then, the industry has caught on, and a lot of them are going straight after the athletic trainers now. And I roll my head and shake my head and go, guys, we let that opportunity blow right by us. But the PTAs and the codas could definitely still jump on that. And you'll show some examples of these and what the pay range is, and it's decent. And it's like you said, it's great work because as I teach in all my classes, there's 2 spheres. There's reactive medicine, that's the stuff we were taught, and there's prevention medicine, that's the stuff we weren't taught. The reactive medicine has been around enough decades to where piles of rules and regs have been piled for decade after decade to choke out opportunity within the field. I'm sorry. I owned an award-winning outpatient rehab center. I know how the sausage is made. There were no margins after a while. Contrast that with the prevention medicine. It's I don't want to. I'll use the term the Wild West, but
Sky's the limit. How about that?
Yeah, it's wide open because again, you're using your skill set, but you're not treating patients. You're not dealing with ICD-10 or ICD-9 or whatever we are on now on the ICD system. You're not treating diagnoses. You're not treating. You're not using CPT codes. You're working with well human beings and keeping them well. They may have fatigue, they may have stress, they may have all the things we all have, but you're not in any way working with a patient. In fact, that's one of the biggest things we usually have to correct among our brethren. I'll leave it here. I had a couple of years ago, I speak keynote at a couple of different conferences, and one guy called me, and he just wanted to vent. And he was a safety manager for a paper plant in Savannah, Georgia. And he said, I just ran the PT we had on site here out of here. And I was shocked to hear that. And I was sad to hear that. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, the guy wrote a bunch of notes on encounters he had, and he described the people as patients. And that means, you know what? Because of your professional designation, that's not first aid. OSHA says it's not first aid. And now we have to log those as recordables, which means our workers' comp rates are going to skyrocket. My point being is really knowing the distinction between those two worlds is important. But the opportunity is in that prevention realm, especially for our PTAs and our CODAs.
I agree. And there's so many pros to this. I mean, you have prevention, you have reduced professional limitations, you have reduced physical, burden. Like if you are an inpatient and you're tired of treating an inpatient, lifting heavy patients time after time after time, ergonomics is a breeze. I mean, industrial ergonomics is a little bit more complex, but it's more intellectually complex. I mean, but both are fairly non-physical jobs. And so if you're looking for, if you have like back pain right now and your body is really shut down from doing therapy as a job, like this is a great transition because you can use your skills and your intelligence and not feel like your education is wasted. And in fact, I almost think like it's going to be even better. You're going to finally feel free. Like you can truly use all of your education.
Wow, that you make an exceedingly good point. I didn't realize our conversation would go there, but I'm actually glad you did. It's well known that the worst industries for ergonomic injuries, strains, sprains, aches, and pains, number one is construction. Number two is healthcare.
Yeah.
We harm more coworkers in healthcare than a whole host of other industries, and they treat us like replaceable parts. You're speaking to somebody whose last gig was about 40 minutes from here at I was doing some weekend hospital work just to pay the bills. Always a good little thing if you're trying to get a side hustle going is go to an inpatient place and say, hey, I'll cover your Saturdays and Sundays. And they're usually like, you will? And I'm like, yeah, every Saturday and Sunday. That's 104 days a year. I can work 104 days a year. Now, if you have family obligations, I understand the stress and all like that on your life, but you're off 5 days a week. So I did that. But yeah, just like you're describing, I had nursing in the ICU said, hey, do you think you can help us get so-and-so up out of the Jerry chair? And I said, I don't know. He was actually in a Jerry chair in a sling. That's not a good sign. So I'm like, so you hired him over here? Yeah, but we think he's ready. So anyway, I get him up and, get the gate belt around him. I get him up. We're nose to nose right now. My knees are chalked against him. I'm pulling back. How you feeling? Okay. And I'm pretty good size. I'm 6'1", 210 pounds. And, you know what comes next. He just goes limp. So suddenly I'm suspending, and he was 247 pounds. I know because I wrote up the report, but suddenly, the nurses are calling for 2 and 3 other nurses, and we're getting him over to the chair, and I feel my back doing this. And I'm like, I'm too old for this. I can't be doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So sorry. It's just, I didn't know we'd go there, but I'm actually glad we did because it's very real. And if you look it up, healthcare is number 2 only to the worst one out there, and that's construction.
Yeah. So. Yep. I mean, that's a lot of our group. I mean, I'm in the group. I listen. I feel you. I have aches and pains, and so I mean, we love doing this, but it's just so hard, so physical. I knew year one, I was like, this job is tough. I got to be hedging my bets and doing a lot of different other things to last, a full career. Okay, guys. Well, I'm really glad we're hanging in there. I love that everyone is staying tuned. I love the amazing comments. So Matt, before we show the jobs, let's talk a little bit about what do you need to have to break into these roles? Because I'm sure people, and myself too, a little intimidated to apply to an ergonomic position. So can you talk a little bit about what do we need to break into these roles?
Well, you and I had talked yesterday discussing other coursework about some folks are entrepreneurial like we are, and we love our entrepreneurial colleagues. We're here to groom that and to help them. And some are more 9 to 5. And there's nothing wrong with that either. They just want to do the gig. That kind of draws a real clear distinction then. Remember, we're stepping into a world where there are already professionals, and they're good ones.
Mhm.
Those are generally the safety engineers. They go to 4 years, sometimes 6 years of school to become a safety engineer or an industrial hygienist, and eventually they work their way into a safety manager's role. By the way, they make really good money too. When you're a safety manager of a big plant, your life is going to be hell, but you're going to make they're going to compensate you very well. Um, that realm, if you want to go the 9 to 5 realm, then you really would want to look for certification that's more engineering focused. And there's something called the BCPE, and it's a board of competency for, among other things, in the environmental health and safety world, ergonomics. So the BCPE, you'd be going for what's called a CPE designation. That's a certified professional ergonomist, and that would give you credence in working with those safety engineers. If they see those letters after your name, they're going to go, okay, she's one of us. She may be a PT or an OT or a PTA or a CODA, but she's got that basic competencies, and that's what you'd be looking at if you were going to hire in.
And you mean
If
more like the industrial route, like the industrial ergonomics, that's what
Yeah,
you need.
yeah, thank
Just to
you for that.
clarify for everyone.
Yeah, thank you for that distinction. You're exactly right. That would be more of the big league industrial sort of stuff, and that's worth pursuing. That's Don't get me wrong. Uh, the and However, for many of us, that could very well be overkill. So, in my course, I try to introduce our attendees to the vernacular of lean continuous improvement. And that's how I built my model around the lean continuous improvement model. And that's because that's the language of our clients. That's the language of many of these industrial or corporate workplaces. They know lean. So we need to know lean too. However, you'll see things like Lean Six Sigma, and Six Sigma is more geared towards the engineer. And it's really more of a deep dive than you need to know. Trust me, I've read uh, almost a dozen books on this stuff. And Six Sigma winds up being about 65 different statistical tools. You don't need to know that. That's for the engineers. You just knowing lean is enough. You understand continuous improvement. Lean is very zen. It's kind of very Eastern, and it's quite beautiful, actually. Same thing applies with what we're talking about here. So if you want to go to the 9 to 5, you might go after Lean Six Sigma. And by the way, they got a white belt, a yellow belt, a green belt, and a black belt. And you will learn some serious, what. But if you decide that's the path you want to go on, you get a CPE, a certified professional ergonomist, and you happen to be a lean green belt or something. I'm pretty confident you're going to get hired at some pretty impressive place to be an on-site. You may not even work in the therapy realm, but you may use what your training was for that. Now, that's one category. The other category is, okay, you're more entrepreneurial. It's a lot of stuff you don't need to know. And you could go with a certification like an RIPS1, an RIPS2. We have a similar designation at the back school. There are other ones where you're kind of you're holding on to more of what you learned in PT or OT school, and you're just leveraging it a different way. So one One is more of a drift into another world. The other, the second that I just described, is something closer to home. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, it does. And so I'm going to simplify it for people. So
Please.
if you you did a great job, Matt. But so
Go
what
off
mastering
camera
about
for
it is,
a
yes,
Go
yes, go
ahead.
for it. So the industrial side where you're working in the paper mills or a manufacturing plant, it's a lot more complex. That knowledge is more complex, and hence the additional designations you may need for that, like a CPE. But if you want to work in more of the wellness side, the office ergonomics, then the RIPS designation, the Remote Injury Prevention Specialist, which is our course, which is below, I've got the link right there, that will help you both on the entrepreneurial side and on the office ergonomics side. We cover how to perform remote office ergonomic assessments. And then I dive into how you can simply set this up on the entrepreneurial side too. So we kill two birds with one stone. And I'm going to show you now some of the job posts that so you can see that you can really apply to these positions. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here.
While you're doing that, let me also say that it's not nearly as binary as we're describing. In other words, you could lay this out linearly. So maybe you start out in the we've seen that as well, where people start out in the RIPS world and they go RIPS 1, RIPS 2. Then they decide, I think I'm ready to make the jump to CPE. In other words, they can spread this out however they see fit. They don't necessarily have to split tracks right at the beginning. They could lay it out one after the other. So that's an important
Yes.
distinction.
Good to note that exactly. Can you see my screen?
I can. Yeah,
Awesome. Do you see the Indeed job post here?
I do. And as I see this, this is definitely, I would not be, if I were a PTA or a CODA, I would not be dissuaded by the fact that it says certified athletic trainer, kinesiologist,
Yes.
exercise physiologist. I would jump into that with both feet.
Jump in. And thank you so much for Matt for pointing that out. And I've been doing a lot of that posting when I post these jobs to say, please scroll down and look all the way at the qualifications. Don't just look at the title. Look all the way down at the whole post. If you see ATC, if you just see PT here or OT or whatever, please look at the whole thing because a
Right.
lot of jobs, when I'm finding these and procuring these for the remote ergonomics course right there, I share these jobs once a month. I go and find them and provide them to our students. Um, really look at all of it because you may be dissuaded by this, but I'm going to show you that it below or down here, it says right here, physical therapy, occupational therapy, right here, physical therapy assistant or occupational therapy assistant. So
Beautiful.
you just looking at this, and this is for any job out there, please just look at the whole post. Um,
Yeah.
so I wanted to show you this because you'll see that you qualify. Everyone on here qualifies for this job. This is full time, 40 hours a week. This is in Sacramento, California. So if anyone's in California, check it out. I don't believe this one's remote. So with this, it's by Briotics Health. They are a
Mhm.
sports medicine and ergonomic coaching company. And if you scroll down to the job duties, this it's right up our alley. Provide education and training for injury prevention. We do that daily. Everyone, you do that daily, right? Provide
Yep.
on-site care and management of work and non-work related discomforts and illnesses. I do that every day.
Wow.
Evaluate client site employees as needed for ergonomic screens, musculoskeletal assessments, and then documentation. Easy peasy breezy. And right here, qualifications. We talked about that PT could apply for this, OT, OTA, PTA. Experience with musculoskeletal care is a plus. Well, we all have that, and there we go. I mean, and so it's awesome. So that's just
Uh,
one. Oh, go ahead.
I'm I'm so glad you're doing this. I really, this caught me by surprise, but I want to say that uh, good for you because yeah, whenever you look at these, don't start at the top. Start at the bottom and scroll up, and you may be pleasantly surprised. And I may also say I do work for Briotics. They pronounce it Briotics, and I do work for them. And in fact, tomorrow I'm doing a office ergonomics. This is going to be a post-injury one, so that they're not some. They have, just like we said, they have pre and they have post, and I'll be doing one about 40 minutes from here in Asheville. And Briotics has also sent me around the country. I did 50, 60, I can't remember how many ergonomic assessments at poultry processing plants. That may not sound glamorous to you, but I enjoyed every minute of it. So did the colleague who went along with me, and we traveled around to different plants and stayed in different towns, and it was pretty cool. We were in Texas, we were in Georgia, we were in a couple Florida, we were in a couple other states. But funny you'd bring up a Briotics ad.
I
That's
have
really
them.
cool.
So
Yeah,
this gets a stamp of approval. So
yeah,
I've got several different job posts here because I want to show you the variation in title. So for everyone listening, you may be like, well, what do I search to find these jobs too? So this one, it's a lot less descriptive. You can see here. They don't really mention ergonomics or anything. This one is wellness specialist. This one is corporate ergonomics. And this one is injury prevention specialist. So really vary your titles when you're on Indeed so that you can hit all these different um, you know, potential job postings out there. So unfortunately, this one did expire, but I really wanted to show it because of the variation in this job title. But scrolling down again, we've got here that this one is even less requirements: associate degree in physical therapy or bachelor's degree in exercise science or similar. So assistants could have applied to this, therapists, OTs, and then going down experience. Um, Computer proficiency, public speaking, developing well-being strategies. We do this every day.
yeah.
Job duties, develop ergonomics program, including ergonomic evaluations, training classes, equipment needs, materials. You're fostering safe patient handling, developing health and wellness programs, even like health coaching, what Matt was talking about with the stress, eating, physical activity. So hopefully I'm inspiring you that you are a good fit for this. So it may be intimidating to apply for these very different roles, but even though the title is maybe very different, the role is not that much different compared to what you're doing right now. Um, so
And
this
as
one
we
right here. Yeah, go for it,
and
Matt.
as we said earlier, you're really pulling your superpowers out of the box and applying them in different ways. Everything that we were taught in the reactive medicine world is convergent. Everything goes from wide angle to narrow. This is divergent. You're taking that skill set and you're putting it in areas you never realized, and you discover things about yourself that are pretty wonderful. That, as Emma is saying, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this, getting up in front of people and leading them in stretches or in breath work or whatever, because I've been doing it with patients one on one for years, or I've been doing group classes in the clinic. And suddenly you realize you're putting it in these different settings, and it's very validating and empowering.
Exactly. You guys got this. You got this. So this
Truly.
one, once again, different title, corporate ergonomics. So very, very your title search. This one is with Intel. So I wanted to share this because shout out to Emily. She is one of our students and she is rocking it. She's an amazing physical therapist and she is doing so many amazing things in ergonomics and just killing it out there. So shout out to Emily. She is amazing. And you know what she's really doing? She's making things happen. I had a great conversation with her, and she's going out, and you know what? She's finding these companies, and she's dialing them up on the phone, and giving them a call, and talking to them, and starting a dialogue, and really, putting herself out there to get all these different job opportunities. But she applied for Intel, and she's got a freaking interview with Intel for this position. So
Wow,
awesome.
that's awesome. Wow, that's so great. Oh,
um,
that's good news.
Yeah, but if we scroll to the qualifications here, so this one, physical therapy, occupational therapy, athletic trainer, kinesiology. So even though they flat out don't say CODA or OTA or PTA, if you have athletic trainer in the mix, I still think you can apply. And then if we go up to look at the duties, once again, it's, that's what we offer. Hold on, let me find the duties here. Develop and manage care programs for injury prevention. We got that. Determine goals, objectives, structure of musculoskeletal disorder prevention process. I can do that. Minimize risks, early intervention, developing as needed processes to avoid fatigue and discomfort. I mean, this is like a therapist's dream. I sort of feel like ergonomics is like a therapist's dream because it's what we always wanted, which is to like help people before it gets like where we can't help them because they have such chronic pain and their pain is so horrible.
You know, Emma, I used to call it years ago, home health for industry. It,
Yeah,
if that helps you wrap your mind around it, that's really what it is. It's home health for the corporate world or the industry. And if you've ever dabbled in home health, you realize how much creativity you bring to that. It's like, okay, you don't have dumbbells, grab a can of beans. I'm going to show you how to do this with a can of beans. Oh, you don't have well, listen, I'm going to show you how to do squats at your kitchen counter. And it's the same thing, although now you've got this bigger playground. And
yeah.
it's really cool. It
Yeah,
really is.
exactly. So Amazon, guys, Amazon is hiring a bunch of injury prevention specialists, and
Are
and
across the US.
across the US, there are so many jobs all the time for Amazon for this route. And you know what I think is, I think we're going to see these jobs more and more because there's a
Yep.
shift to a better work environment. Startup companies, tech companies, they want this better environment. And at first, they started with the cool ping pong table and the fancy snacks and that.
Yeah.
But I think soon they're going to realize that wellness is just as an amazing benefit as the ping pong table and as the snacks. And I think that you're going to see more Facebook companies hiring professionals like us. You're going to see, just like Intel is, you're going to see this more and more in more companies. I know Pfizer had an on-site person performing ergonomics and corporate wellness. So there are more and more companies out there doing this. And so
Yep.
Matt and I always talk about is get ahead of the game. This is just catching on, but it's going to be there. And so if we can get on the forefront and get
That's
you
such
experience, get you jobs, it's so important.
it's such a good point. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah, you're
step
good.
on you there. But again, it's you're still ahead of this curve. I promise you, you're still ahead of this curve. And in our class, we talk about it. It's like, listen, I say that to begin with, and then I'm like, I want you to start to cultivate a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month, and 2-year plan and start plotting towards that because this stuff could really be rocking and rolling a year from now. And you're still ahead of this. Don't react to it. Be waiting for it. Be ready for it.
Yep,
So
100%.
it's happening. Yeah. Beautiful.
100%. And this is an awesome adjunct to your business. If you're out there and you have a practice, I mean, adding this to your practice is no brainer. Like Mike Chua, my co-founder here, I just talked about him adding this to his practice. So
Right.
don't think of this as something that is all alone. Like you can add this into current practices, or if you're someone who wants to stay at their current job, take the ergonomics class that we have, go to your manager or whoever owns the practice that you work at and say, "Hey, I'm a remote injury prevention specialist. I know how to add this into our clinic." And that can maybe work you up into more positions and allow you to do this instead of maybe your therapy. And so there's so many ways to use this certification and to use ergonomics for so many things.
We talk about that too in the class that I recommend start as a side hustle. Don't quit your day job. The old thing they always said in showbiz, keep your day job, do this on the side, have that 6-month, 12-month, 18-month plan. And you may be pleasantly surprised that one of these gigs you're showing us here comes along and you nail it and you have a very nice decision to make. It's one of those good problems to have. Hey, do I want to keep doing this, or am I getting kind of tired of the way I'm treated in the clinic and that I've got to keep up a 90% productivity? I don't have time to use the bathroom during the day. And oh, by the way, they don't give me enough time to do my notes. So I'm putting in 55-hour weeks and 60-hour weeks instead of the 40 they promised me. Oh, don't get me started. You know, and it's sort of like, you mean I could actually have a gig that starts at 8 and ends at 4? Really? Wow. You know, and that's what these are like. They're generally not these salaried positions, although some are, but they're generally, like I said, mine was $60 an hour. It was hourly. And I put in an honest 40 and the week was over. And it was no more, oh, you still have 10, patient notes to do. No, thank you. So forgive me, I'm rambling and I'm also venting a little, but I've lived this. So I
No,
know.
we're good for venting, right, guys? Come and vent. It's
Oh,
all
oh,
so this
yeah.
one so I wanted to show this one, guys, because this is a little different. So we've mentioned a couple times industrial ergonomics, and that's more of the paper mill, the manufacturing plant, the pharmaceutical plant, these other more complex environments that aren't just a simple desk and computer and chair. They're more complex. It's watching you pick up a water and see how you carry it to the truck, put it on the truck, and then drop it off, off the truck, to a person's house and come back, looking at all of that. And so here's an industrial therapist, and you can see that right here. You qualify, all of you do PT, PTA, CODA, OT. Scrolling down, here's their description. And let's go to, this is a shorter post, but this is one that I feel like you would benefit from some further education for the industrial side, because, I think this would maybe be a harder interview to ace, but you could always discuss with them and see what their learning opportunities are. Are they open to allowing you to shadow, like sort of how Matt was able to, you know, be under the wings and sort of see how things work and learn a little bit on the job. So there are these industrial positions that you qualify for as well. So I just wanted to show you that you fit the bill for both spectrums of ergonomics.
Yeah, my paper mill job, my alma mater at the University of Florida sent me a DPT student who they actually allowed it to be her rotation. So she was affiliated with the fella. Remember, I said I split the gig when we were going in. So she did some clinical time with him, but she spent much of her time in the plant with me, and just she fell in love with it. She's just like, God, this is what I want to do, and I'm like, hey, I'm telling you, there's no going back. Once you get into this, it's the whole new world, and it what it does is it takes, it's almost like being a wallflower, and then suddenly you bloom into this beauty, and that's kind of, you find that in yourself. All of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I can take this knowledge on the road. I don't have to limit it to the clinic. I can do this anywhere.
Yes.
And that's, so suddenly you find yourself, volunteering in the community. And I'm telling you, what it does, it really just springs you from your cage.
Exactly. Well, for everyone out there, that's all we really wanted to talk about today. Matt and myself, we do have an amazing certification course. It's called the Remote Injury Prevention Specialist Level 1. And that's really where we dive into office ergonomics using, Zoom and online. But really, even though it's remote injury prevention specialist, all the skills can also carry over to the in-person on-site office ergonomic assessments as well. And so if you're interested, it is very reasonably priced. It's $250. You get 3 hours of live CEU training by Matt, and he is an incredible speaker, if you hadn't noticed. Lots of wisdom, just a wealth of information. And so he will walk you through how to perform remote ergonomic assessments. And then on my side, we'll dive into how to set up the business side as well. So it's an amazing course. I highly recommend it. And I think, hopefully we have inspired you to take the leap for some of these jobs, because you can do it. So if you got anything out of this webinar, most importantly, it's that there are careers out there for you, including all the assistants out there. And I really hope ergonomics is on your radar.
If I may say, Emma, again, to your followers, working alongside you is a labor of love, because you are fulfilling a need here. There's something I see as a therapist of my vintage and being around about 30 years, that's my dog Buck in the back there. What our colleagues, our newer colleagues and not so new colleagues are facing with things like education debt, and only so many opportunities, Buck, lie down, buddy, for the clinicians. To be able to have more venues to earn is really important. And again, we really get into this, let's get away from either or thinking, and let's look at lateral thinking or linear, and how do we get these things off the ground for ourselves that may one day take over, because we want it to, our earning potential. So I just want to say again, the work you do, you really are out there fulfilling a need, Emma. And that's one of the reasons I love working with alternative healthcare careers, because I feel, let me wrap it up here, I feel this is the new private practice. That back in the day, we used to go into unbelievable amounts of debt. I did it to get a physical therapy clinic off the ground. And then we scratched and dug ourselves out of that hole. If we were lucky, not all did. And now this model is the new private practice. The cost of entry is pennies on the dollar compared to what I spent. And that's opportunity. Again, I can't reiterate enough. You're still ahead of this curve, but this curve will catch up. As I talked about earlier in the past hour, I was looking for a PT 10 years ago. Nobody answered the ad. I was looking for a PTA. Nobody answered the ad, but the ATs answered the ad for a lot less than what I paid the PTs and would have paid the PTs and the PTAs. Don't let the opportunity pass. My goal in working with Emma is I'm at a certain stage in my career where I don't really have to do this much longer. What I'd like to do is leave the place better than I found it. And this is how we're doing that, is to give you guys the tools to be able to start that new private practice. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope that's inspiring.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. No, I agree. Matt goes above and beyond. We say 3 hours, but it always goes to 4, no matter what we do. It always does. He's awesome.
You don't have to stay, but yeah.
He's just like so much knowledge. So let's take a couple questions here, and let's see. Oh, great. Oh, awesome. Rosalind says, great course. Thank you, Rosalind. We are so excited. She's adding it to her practice. Roz is great. She's amazing.
She is.
Thank you, Tessa. Thank you for that. Emily's on here too. Woo! Thank you. Emily's on here as well. Awesome. Well, if anyone has any questions, you can just put them in the comments. Please check out our remote ergonomics course. It's called the Remote Injury Prevention Specialist Level 1, where we dive into remote office ergonomics and how you can perform that assessment. But of course, you can carry that into the in-person office assessments as well. It's so in-depth, and we hope that it can transform your life and add a whole new career or a whole new side hustle that you maybe never thought was possible, and to free you from any sort of burnout. Or, a lot of people are trying to find jobs right now. So this is a whole nother avenue. If you're struggling to find a job, these jobs are out there too. So thank you so much, Matt, for your time.
HelloNote is a truly therapist-friendly practice management solution with integrated EMR that will enhance workflow, efficiency, and patient care. HelloNote reduces error and allows you to spend more time with your patients. It comes integrated with billing. Claims are generated once a note is completed. You can bill with one click and a patient portal, which streamlines the patient intake process. Beautifully engineered and cloud-based for easy accessibility, the software works on all platforms. You can access patient records from anywhere. We also offer 24/7 support. HelloNote is the practice management solution that you're looking for.